Always remember, is this something that you actually want to do, or are you just thinking that because you live in a capitalistic society? Today, I'm going to be recommending 5 self-help and career development books. I have gotten a lot of requests about this because I do try to read nonfiction and self-help books pretty regularly. I've also gotten a lot of questions about what advice I would give to people who are looking to start out in design, or how to move up in their career, or how I ended up being an art director at Twitter. So along with each book recommendation, I will share a little bit of my own personal experiences and my advice. The reason why I am finally making this video now is because Goodwall is sponsoring this video. Goodwall is an app that is basically a positive community for you to show your achievements, network with other people, and also find other scholarships and jobs. You can build your own personal profile to showcase all of your achievements and your skills and ideas all in one place. When you go on the feed, there's a whole bunch of inspiration of what other people are doing. I think the most useful part of it is the opportunities tab. They handpick different opportunities or awards or scholarships. You can be connected to internships and jobs. You can find me on Goodwall and check out the achievements I added. You can add feedback if you want. I can even check out your profile and comment as well. This shit is free. There's no premium version. I'm gonna have a link in my description where you can download it and you don't have to pay anything for it at all. Now on to the recommendations. I work as a designer and as an art director, so I will say that my advice is pretty much limited to creative fields. So if you want to be a doctor or have some other kind of smart job, you're on your own, because I don't have the brain capacity for that. But I will try to help as best as I can. Some of these books are geared more towards like creative fields, and then some of them can be a bit more applicable. This is a book that I read recently that, even though it wasn't anything new to me, if you are starting out in a creative field, this is the kind of book that you could get as like an introductory kind of lesson. That is Little Black Book, written by Otega Uwagba. This is a toolkit for working creative women, although I don't think this should be limited to just women. Obviously, like, anyone can read it. It's basically a travel-sized career handbook that you can use as a go-to resource when you are trying to figure out what kind of career that you want. This handbook has bite-sized advice that is categorized into different sections for you to figure out how to build your own career. Some of these sections are like how to negotiate a pay raise, how to build a personal brand, how to network, how to overcome creative blocks. It's pretty much all of the things that you're gonna have to deal with inevitably if you want to be a creative professional. Since this book covers a lot of topics, I am going to just choose one as my personal anecdote. One of these sections in this book is to negotiate for your salary, and this is also a question that I get asked a lot, both from YouTube viewers and also from my friends. People feel pretty timid about asking for a raise or for a promotion, but honestly, it's just one of those things where you have to suck it up and do it. I personally have started a Google Doc with all the great things that I did throughout the year. So if I'm working on a project and the project got amazing feedback from the client, or my other team members that I worked with had positive things to say about it, I'll track them down in a Google Doc. Being able to record those inputs from other people and having a paper trail kind of helps my argument that I'm doing a good job. Throughout the year, it can be hard to remember every single good thing that you did. It helps for me to have this running doc that I update regularly every time like I lead a project or I hit a milestone. Then when it's time for performance reviews, or when you talk to your manager and ask for a raise, you have all the receipts. It's not about you feeling like you should get a promotion. It's more about you knowing that you should get a promotion because of X, Y, Z. And if you can connect those things to the job qualifications for the position that you want, then that's even better. The second book that I want to recommend is Making Ideas Happen by Scott Belsky. Pretty much everyone can get any great idea, but it's the execution that's really the crucial component of it. This book essentially compiles practices like how to generate ideas in moderation and how to kill your ideas very liberally. He says that every task can be broken down into action steps, references, and back burner items. Action steps are the things that you need to do in order to make this idea happen. References are related info or research for your project, and back burner items are things that you have to do, or it would be nice if you did them, but they're not higher priority compared to action steps. So if you're able to list all of those things, you can really make a plan that's actionable. And you have to put in the hard work of organizing your timetable around action and around execution. A lot of people have asked me how I got started in design design and how they could get started as well if they were interested in pursuing that as a career. And the advice that I always give is create your own side projects. If you are a designer, I would personally argue that having a good portfolio is more important than having a good GPA. That's something unique, and it shows more about what you're interested in rather than things that you did only because you were required to do it. When I was a student, I didn't put any of my school projects in my portfolio. I gave myself my own projects. These side projects were also a way for me to learn how to be a designer. And the first project that I did was teaching myself how to use a program called Sketch. I had an idea to create a smartwatch app that would help users perform CPR with the accurate rate of compressions. I came up with the idea, I did research on it, and then I designed it on Sketch. This is not a real app. This was just an idea that I had that I just made happen by designing it. I mapped out the user flow of how the app would work, and it was just like a starter project for me to learn how to use this program that I was very new to. It doesn't matter if they're not real. It matters more that you're able to convey it as if it were real for your portfolio. This was one of the projects that I think was a huge factor for how I got my first job at an ad agency. People were just impressed by the idea that I had and just the initiative that I had to make this a thing in the first place. Sometimes I made websites, sometimes I made posters. Whatever idea I had, I just tried to channel it in any creative medium so that I could keep on practicing different programs like Photoshop or Illustrator. The next book I want to recommend is The Productivity Project by Chris Bailey. This is an author who decided to spend a full year where he would test out different methods of productivity and see which ones were the most effective. He did a bunch of experiments and interviews and research about different ways that we approach productivity and which ones would be the most successful. Some of the experiments that he did involved cutting out coffee from his diet, living in isolation, limiting smartphone usage, exercising more, waking up early, all the tidbits of advice that you typically get but you've been too lazy to implement. He kind of did the work for you so that he can tell you whether it works or not. So it's interesting to see what works and what doesn't work. I think this book would be especially helpful during this weird period of quarantining during the coronavirus to be more productive with a project that you want to do, or just have like a regular routine and try to be like a functional human being. Then you can check out this book and start to think about different ways that you can try to tackle productivity. It's going to be different for everyone. Not every method is going to be as effective for other people. So I'm still trying to figure out what works for me. I've tried out different things and it's always been hard for me to keep up with them. What I have found to be consistent for me so far is setting up a Pomodoro timer. I usually use mytomatoes.com, which is a timer that sets for 25 minutes where you just do work nonstop, and every 25 minutes there is a 5-minute break. Sometimes I don't work the whole time. Actually, most of the time, I don't work the whole time. I will put off starting any type of work for a long time. And it's hard for me to focus on it too. But when I see a timer and I know that it's ticking in the background, that just helps me focus better than I usually would. I also physically write down my to-do list. I have tried so many different virtual to-do lists like Wunderlist, Trello, whatever millions of apps they have out there. I've never really stuck with them. Really, the only thing I've stuck with was just writing it physically. What I found is that I prefer to do all of my work digitally, but when it comes to writing a to-do list or planning my schedule and my day, I prefer to write it physically. Just something about writing it makes it feel like I have to do it now. And it's also very satisfying when you get to like cross out everything. I will literally write out every single thing that I need to do, even if it's for stuff like showering or taking out the trash. Every little thing I can think of, I will write it down because I know that I am such a lazy ass that if I do not write it down, I'm not going to do it. A lot of it is trial and error, but I think that you can start off with that productivity book to see what methods you want to try out and see which ones stick for you. And then you can start to develop good habits from there. The fourth book I want to recommend is Crucial Conversations. This is the book that I would recommend to literally every single person. Even if you're not a working professional, learning how to manage conversations is so important just for relationships in general. There are going to be so many times throughout your life where you're going to have to deal with a crucial conversation, which is basically a fancy word for a tough conversation that you don't want to deal with at all, but you have to in order to be an adult. But obviously that title would be too long. It's so hard for me to choose just one takeaway from this book because I agree with literally everything it says. But I think one of the most important takeaways that I've had from it is when you are approaching a crucial conversation, aka a stupid ass adult conversation that you don't want to deal with, but you have to, it is very important to figure out what you want the goal of this conversation to be. If you are confronting someone, whether that's your manager or your coworker or your boyfriend or whatever, what is the goal goal that you want to happen from this conversation? Is it so that you have a safer working environment? What are you trying to achieve from this? Because when you're able to set out this goal, then that will really inform the way that you approach the conversation. If you don't have a goal beforehand and you just run with your emotions, most of the time it's just gonna end up with arguments where you're more concerned about being right or about your ego rather than whatever it is you are trying to achieve. It's even better if you can try to have a mutual goal between you and the person that you're talking to. That way, the conversation is actually about two people working productively together rather than two people arguing from opposite ends. You have to be persuasive, not abrasive. That's the key point here that book Twitter could use some help on. But that's a whole nother video altogether. My personal anecdote from this, I have so fucking many. I had to practice this a lot at my last job. One of the many hundreds of examples that I can think of was when we hired a creative director who was just terrible at his job. He was someone who was not putting in the work that he should be doing. And on top of that, he was just a shitty person overall. He directly managed one of my coworkers and he always made her feel so awful. He would make her cry at work. He would just do or say things that would be really hurtful to her self-esteem. He was also a low-key racist because he called me the only other Asian girl's name, even though we looked totally different and we had totally different names. He was making a rape jokes while we were working. It was a fucking mess. And he wasn't being checked at all. Like his behavior was being enabled by leadership. And it was so frustrating. This was one of like the most emotional situations and dilemmas I've had to go through. Having those types of crucial conversations where I'm able to set aside my emotions and just focus on the goal was so important for me to effectively convey the issues that I had about this person and hopefully try to get him the fuck out of here. All of the women on our team did not like him because he was an asshole. Unfortunately, when leadership is predominated by white men, they don't see the issue. So it's like, how do you communicate that issue without setting them off? They didn't want to be accused of being sexist. So if you accuse them of something like that, or if you imply it, then they will shut down. Based on how sensitive leadership gets over topics about diversity or sexism, I knew that it wouldn't have been effective for me to jump into the conversation and be like, I don't like this person because he's racist and sexist. Even though those would be valid reasons for me, those wouldn't be valid reasons for the person that I was talking to who didn't necessarily prioritize those things. Instead, I tried to frame the conversation based on our company values. Every company has a set of values that should be in your employee handbook or on your website or whatever. And you can use those values as a way to establish that common goal. That way, when you are bringing up a concern about a project or about another employee, it's not about your personal feelings. It's about your concerns that this person is not following company values. For example, one of our values was making sure that we had the highest bar of excellence when it comes to performing these projects. I was concerned that this person was not performing to the highest bar of excellence because he was not managing his time well. He was not putting in an equal amount of work compared to other coworkers. Another company value that we had was to make good company. I was concerned that he was lowering team morale because he did X and Y and Z, and those things contradicted the company values that we want to make sure that we implement so that we can have a healthy working environment, blah, blah, blah. That kind of bullshit like that, you're able to align your goals with the person that you're talking to. That's just an easier way for you to be on the same page. And that way, it doesn't seem like the conversation is emotional or based on personal bias. It's just based on things that you're trying to look out for the team and for the company. Also, happy to say we got that asshole fired. But I'm even happier to say that I no longer have to deal with those types of conversations. Since I've started working on Twitter, I have not had any problems with leadership at all. There is a significantly less amount of bullshit. Not only are the people in leadership positions at Twitter diverse, they also don't let ego get in the way, which is so important. Unfortunately, it is so rare to find a workplace where the organization doesn't have an egotistical person or a bad manager. You will probably have to deal with it multiple times. I think Crucial Conversations is such a valuable book for you to figure out how to navigate something like that. Especially if you are a woman of color. You are gonna have to deal with that shit. Like, that's your rite of passage, okay? The level of bullshit that you're gonna have to deal with is gonna be so fucking high. This is required reading for you, okay? Unfortunately, these are the skills that we have to learn in order to thrive in this capitalistic society. So, you know, just make the best of what you have. Check out that book. and good fucking luck. And then the last book that I'm gonna recommend is Full-Time You by Meg Lewis. This is a self-discovery workbook that helps you figure out what kind of career that you want. Specifically, it helps you create a career that is uniquely tailored to you and your strengths and your interests. The workbook guides you into identifying your strengths and being able to pinpoint the qualities that make you unique and translate them to a career that only a person like you could have. It also helps you define your life's purpose that will drive your career and your life decisions. I read this book when I was applying for my new job. I was at a point in my life where even though I supposedly had what I wanted, which was to be an art director at an ad agency and get to work with all of these cool clients like Google and Adidas and have a beautiful portfolio and all that stuff, I realized I still wasn't happy. So many of the things that I thought that I wanted was only because I thought that's what I should be doing. And so this is just my personal advice to you, that if you are in a position of privilege where you are able to have a little bit of influence or decision making in what you want to do, don't limit yourself to what you feel like you should be doing. If you're able to pursue what you actually want to do, then just go for it, because this resulted in so much angst when I was trying so hard to climb up the corporate ladder that by the time I finally achieved several promotions later, I was like, why am I still not content? And it was because I realized my motivations were misguided. I didn't want to work for Google. I thought I did because Google is like a big company and a big brand, and it's something that I thought I should want. It didn't align with the things that I was truly interested in doing. So I appreciated having this workbook for me to really reflect on qualities that make me unique, that I could channel for a job, and the things that I was interested in doing. Even before I became a designer, I had always been interested in storytelling in any kind of medium, whether that's writing or through design or through videos or a photo shoot or whatever. I like all of those different mediums as long as it is all rooted in storytelling. That's why I have written books ever since I was little. That's why I like documenting my travels through vlogs and videos. I like being able to document my experiences and stories and my feelings. So if I were to find a way to create and document and share stories in a way that's creative and engages with other people and be able to make a career out of that, whether that's being an art director or being an author, those are the kinds of things that are in line with what I truly want to do. These were the things that I talked about in my interview at Twitter because they were interested in what I actually wanted from this job. So I really emphasized on wanting to do something involving storytelling, wanting to do something that was creative and artistic and not just for the sake of boosting sales, because I didn't care about sales and advertising. I cared more about the story and the impact on people. I expressed those things during my interview at Twitter, and I think it came off as very genuine and from the heart because, I mean, they hired me, so here I am. Basically, my personal advice is that the more you know what you want and who you are, then you can steer yourself to be on the right direction. You're not gonna know it right away, and that's totally fine, but it's important that you don't neglect what you truly wanna do. It's very easy to get caught up in getting promotions at a fancy job or at a fancy company, but if it's not something that you actually want, then it's not actually gonna make you happy, and if it's not gonna make you happy, then what the fuck was this all for? Always remember, is this something that you actually want to do, or are you just thinking that because you live in a capitalistic society? But if you have the privilege to actually pursue things that fulfill you and that you want to do, just take advantage of that. So many people aren't able to do that. If you're able to do it, you got to do it for the rest of them. So those are 5 books that I'm recommending. If you have made it this far, thanks for watching, and thank you to Goodwill for sponsoring this video. I hope that at least one of the books or pieces of advice was helpful. I hope you unsubscribe from my channel, and goodbye.